Welcome to the Talking Shop podcast, where I'm here to share lessons and experiences in sports performance and professional development. I'm your host, Matt Tomets, and I'm joined with Lee Taylor Walker and Christopher Williams, the head and assistant coach of TCU women's tennis, respectively. And thank you for joining me. How are you guys doing today?
Fantastic, Matt.
Doing great, Matt.
Have us on.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having us.
I'm excited to do this. We've been chatting about it for a little bit now. So for those who are not familiar, would you guys please share a little bit about your backgrounds?
Yeah, sure. So I coached, I grew up in Tennessee, played the junior tennis, college tennis, all that deal. My coaching career started at University of Memphis. Coached there for about 7 years. Went from a pretty average program to a good program. And then in the middle there, worked a little bit with the USTA, which is the governing body of tennis in the United States. And then came to TCU summer of 2014. So I just finished my 6th season, and yeah, it's been going good, and happy to have gotten Christopher here in the last year and a half.
Sweet. And yourself, C-Dub?
Well, you got a couple Tennessee boys on the line here. I'm from the eastern side of the state, and from Knoxville originally, and played a little bit of college tennis at Wofford College, which is a small D1 school in South Carolina. And then I transferred to back home to the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, and played two seasons there, and then stayed there and did a master's. And that was kind of where I got into coaching, coaching a bunch of good players on that team the 2 years of a team that was really good. And I had another idea to do something else for work, and I had no business coaching these really good players. And it was a great experience, and I was super inspired by that. So I just kind of stayed in coaching and had some opportunities come up. And one of those was to go with my cousin on tour. He was good enough to play pro. We made it to about 100 in the world together. And then kind of from there, other opportunities kind of came up, and I stayed on tour with males and females, WTA, ATP players for about 7 years. And then during that time, I kind of built a relationship with Lee, and he provided a lot of counsel throughout those years. And I helped out a little bit at TCU as a volunteer, and then kind of have a girlfriend in Dallas. And so I was kind of using TCU as a little bit of a base, and I was learning from Lee a little bit. And so kind of serendipitous, but the position came open, and I jumped on it. So super grateful.
Christopher's pretty modest. He left out the part that he's coached in every Grand Slam in the world, the US Open, the French Open, Wimbledon, and Australian Open. And he's also worked with our federation, the USTA. So he's very modest when he talks about his 7 years on tour, but he's worked with a lot of really good players. So we're fortunate to have him here at TCU now.
That is very cool. I did not know that, so that's cool to learn. And speaking of serendipitous meetings and kind of stuff like that, how I actually met these two coaches, I'll share really quick. I forgot where we were traveling with the beach volleyball team, if you remember this, Lee. We were in the airport, and
field.
Yeah, and the assistant coach kind of like brought you up to me and was like, "Oh, hey Matt, this is Lee. He's the head coach of the women's tennis team. This is Matt. He's our sports scientist. He does our technology." And we kind of just chatted because you were like super interested, which I was kind of not taken aback by, but sports science is a relatively kind of new thing. And it was new to me. You know, it was my first season traveling with the team.
Yeah.
And then I emailed you that summer and just said, "Hey, if you wanted to get together and chat, you know, I'd love to pick your brain." Just being
Well, actually, Matt, you said if you'd like to get together and talk shop, which I'm learning that's your like lingo. Is that right? You said, yeah, we can just you said that about 12 times. Like, hey, you want to get together and just talk shop?
Well, yeah. And that's what we're doing now. And that's what we did way back when. just casual people in sports performance that love what they do. So we got together that summer. You brought Coach C-Dub along, and there was a little bit of miscommunication where we were meeting, but if you guys remember that, but we made it work. And
Yeah, you showed up at Stolmeyer, and that's not where our offices are.
Yeah.
I learned very quickly that day. So I appreciate you guys sticking with me. And then the tennis team got Whoop this past year, Whoop Technology, and they asked me to help out, just kind of go through the data, chat with the girls, chat with them, kind of bring it all together. And it's been an awesome year with the team. So that is how we all know each other, and how these two guys got to TCU. And one thing that I've really enjoyed learning from these coaches, just being a fly on the wall during some of their coaches' meetings, is just how intentional they are. I say this word a lot around them, because everything they do, whether it's how to structure practice for everyone, for this one girl, how to go about next week, how to plan how's weight's going to go, how to talk to a recruit, whatever it may be, they're on the same page, and they have a very thorough thought process whenever they do stuff. So if you guys could just chat a little bit about how you've developed such cohesiveness and teamwork and a system that you guys have that works. It's been a pleasure to get to know that. If you could share that a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the things we did right off the bat that was important was we have a consultant that works with the team and works with our staff. And I knew that when we hired Christopher, when you have somebody that's been on tour for 7 years, they've coached all the Grand Slams, they've worked at a high level, there's a lot of work that went into that, and he has a real knowledge of the game and what he's doing. And I had worked in collegiate athletics for almost 15 years. So I do think there was a mutual respect when we started, and there was already a foundation of a friendship there that we knew that we wanted that to be protected. So we actually took the consultant that we usually work with everybody on the team, and we made that consultant's number one goal to be our relationship right off the bat. It was going to be every time he checks in with us every few weeks. He's someone who lives here in Fort Worth, and he's up at practices on a daily, weekly basis, and we have meetings every couple of weeks, and it's just the first thing that he goes to. And the reason I think that was important is because there's just got to be 100% honesty in working relationships. And so I think looking back, that has helped us know that that's kind of our cornerstone, that we are going to be 100% open and honest with each other. We respect each other, and we're going to not be afraid to disagree or agree. So I think that was foundational. And then I think what we learned after that, the biggest thing after that was going on our coaches retreat. We set aside, a good 48 hours where we spent, 12 hours a day just going through every detail of the program, like from philosophy to what do we want 5 minutes before practice starting to look like. And that was super helpful, and that allowed for a lot of that transparency. And so I think that was the foundation, and the coaching retreat helped us. And then I think over the last few months, we've just learned our own system that kind of evolved. And I think what we like to call it is kind of a back and forth, So, I present an idea, whatever the idea is, even if Christopher agrees with the idea, he's going to immediately go in and critique that. So it's almost like we had a conversation this morning about a situation that was going on, and we actually agree on it, but he started the conversation and I immediately just went with disagreeing, just to make sure we're covering all sides. And so we have this nice back and forth relationship where we're able to argue, we're able to, but we're similar. We like things very detail oriented. And so we don't, when you're in college sports, you don't have a lot of time. You have 8-hour weeks, 20-hour weeks, but you got to maximize that time. You're not dealing with a professional athlete where you have an unlimited amount of time. And so everything has to be systematic. So I would say, just to summarize that, the consultant has been very helpful. The coaching retreat was very helpful. And then we've just learned. I mean, we've just learned how we gel together. And I would just say the extreme details and the arguing back and forth is helpful. What do you think, Dubs?
Well, I think because of the time limit and all of the things that can happen when you work in an athletic department and you're dealing with 8 student athletes, the situations that can arise are endless. So part of the coaching retreat was an effort, and we use this word all the time in the program, and we try and teach this to our girls, is being proactive. That's something we don't want to react to any situation without having a plan that we've already thought about. That kind of helps take some of the emotional side out of it, so that we know that we're acting with the right, protocols already in place that we've really taken time to think about in an unemotional space. So the coaching retreat is an effort to be proactive in every facet of our program. There wasn't one detail that we didn't go over and make sure that we were very clear on our philosophy, from recruiting to what the practices are going to look like, to how we're going to handle the community, to how we're going to talk to our student athletes, and what our coaching philosophy is. Everything. So that's just kind of an effort to be as proactive as possible. Now, we're not superhuman. There's going to be things that are going to come up that we couldn't have predicted, but it's pretty rare. Because of our diverse backgrounds, like we've seen a lot of stuff, and so we know what the potential is. But I think that's a good why do we do that? Because we want to be proactive.
Yeah, and I like how Coach Lee started out with the mutual respect for each other, how you guys had both done your own thing in different facets of elite competitive tennis. And it all starts from there, and it starts with the common goal of wanting the best for the program. And so the consultant is kind of like a coach's coach, if that's correct.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So it's knowing that you want something for yourselves and for your program, and knowing that you guys can get some outside help, and that's one thing that I think people underutilize is, instead of trying to impact, let's say, all of their 20 athletes. Well, if you impact the coach, he has contact with all of his 20 athletes. So you're maximizing right there. So
exactly.
Not to say that the girls couldn't benefit from that, but if you spend your time with the consultant's time to coach you guys on how to be better coaches, then you guys can maximize, and that's super efficient. And I remember when you guys first told me about the coaches retreat, I was super not taken aback, but I was just like, wow, never heard coaches go and just hash out literally everything about their program before. Like, that's so cool and intentional, like the word I always use. So like I said, it's been a pleasure to watch that process, because I've never seen one like it, and I know that you guys have had a lot of success with it and a lot of learning points along the way, and it's been a privilege. And I remember I asked this question to you guys earlier, but because you guys have all done basically everything within a very elite competitive tennis, why college and why women's tennis?
For me, it was more of just a natural thing that happened. I graduated. I considered playing pro tennis. My head coach retired. Assistant coach became the head coach. I was the assistant coach for the men's team while I was getting a master's degree. And I thought, I don't know what I'll do. But at the time, the women's coach on the women's side at the university was going through a sickness and actually ended up retiring. And so I got thrown into it almost as an interim head coach. It wasn't like something I sought out necessarily. I don't even know if I sought out collegiate coaching. I was in school, and it just could have happened. But I do think when I started doing it and was able to build relationships with the players, and you see a lot of transformation happen from 18 to 22-year-olds. I know in my own life, it was a massive transformation just in my own personal life. That was what attracted me to coaching. So in general, and then on the women's side, what I've learned for the women, what I think they're a lot more realistic and they're a lot more mature in that 18 to 22-year-old. and it takes a little bit longer to build trust with them and to get that true partnership and belief. But once you have it, the loyalty is kind of through the roof. Like I've really had, I've been in this long enough now to have players graduate and go on, and the longer I do it, the more I realize like what a special, unique thing it is to coach the females. I've had experience coaching guys, and they're just more dreamy and oftentimes unrealistic. Their competitive nature is just so high that it's just about being at that next level. And if that means I need to talk to this other coach and get rid of this coach, then that's fine. I just don't see as much of that loyalty there. It's easier to start coaching a guy, I think, right off the bat, because I think they're just ready to get going and ready to get that information and move forward. But they'll also leave you in a heartbeat. Is kind of what I've experienced. Obviously, those are very massive generalizations, but it's why I've grown to actually really appreciate and like the women's side, is really just the relationships with the players. And my wife was a collegiate athlete. Our two kids are involved with the girls on the team. And I just really enjoy that aspect about it. About you, Debs?
Well, in all of my decisions on who to work with throughout my career, it was always just about relationships and who I thought I could get along with and therefore be the most productive. So whenever I switched players, it was because I did research on them, or I knew them, or I knew somebody that knew them, and I felt like I could go in and make an immediate impact because of relationships. So I never really, because I coached a female player on tour. I mean, the majority of them were males, just because that was where I started, and so those were the opportunities that came about. But I'd been presented with plenty of other female pros to work with, and so it was like, can I make a positive impact on this person's career? I never really differentiated between male and female. I didn't have any qualms in going into that. And in fact, the first female I coached, I was really excited to kind of learn about that side of the game, what was going to be different between women's tennis and men's tennis. So I thought it was a great opportunity to get better for my own personal development. And then I think, like with Lee, I mean, I had a tremendous amount of respect for him. So it was kind of a no-brainer to come and just be a part of his program, and help out where I could. And again, it didn't really cross my mind that it was, male or female. I just never really considered it. I wanted to be around people that I enjoyed being around and that I thought could make me better. And that was Lee and Ben at the time, who was the assistant coach. So that was sort of the difference maker. Why college? I mean, I always kind of figured I would end up back in college. I don't think you can beat the consistent positive energy on a college campus. I think maybe there might be some realms in professional sport that elicit a lot of emotion and are really exciting, but there's a consistency on a college campus and in college athletics, and working with an athletic department and a staff of people that all wear the same color. So there's something about that you can't beat. So I think college athletics is the best, quite frankly.
Yeah, and I asked that question because after my first semester with the beach volleyball team, the graduate assistant asked me, they were like, so what was it like your first semester working with the women's team? And I kind of just like thought about it, because no one had ever asked me that before, and that was my first time working with the women's team. And it took me a few days to kind of come up with an answer. And it's just interesting, not to make it the super like dichotomous, they're super separate and different, because they're not, it's mostly similar. But because the beach volleyball team, it's a male head coach and a female assistant coach, and you guys have a male head and assistant coach, and it's a women's team as well. So just an interesting kind of question that I know I've asked you guys before, but I think it's interesting, not always talked about. So I just want to throw that out there. And before we move on to the other questions, one more thing I was going to plug in earlier. I forgot what episode of TSP it was, but organizing core values. I got the inspiration and basically the whole framework for the episode from one of your guys' coaching philosophies with the pyramid and momentum management and all that stuff. So not to spend too much time on that, but if you guys could give like a little brief kind of overview from the original sources themselves of the pyramid momentum management.
Lee would love to. He always wants to talk about the pyramid, although he might struggle to breeze through it.
I'll be brief.
Three bullet points.
Okay, I'll be brief. You know, when you're hired to be the head coach at 24 years old and you really don't know what you're doing and you're the youngest Division I head coach in the country, I quickly asked for help. So that was really the starting point for me, was asking for help. And I had a mentor that guided me that direction and said, you need to establish your core values first. So that whole process then led me to really start thinking about my own coaching that I had growing up and what my strengths were and who were all my coaches. And you don't really know as a young athlete if your coach is good or not, because you assume that everyone else is being coached that way. It's only until you get older and you start to reflect back and experience other coaching that you realize, oh, wow, man, my high school basketball coach was really good. And he was really good because of X, Y, and Z. Oh, and that tennis coach when I was 11 was exceptional at this because of this. So I started gathering all that information. And then I realized my first year or two coaching is like, well, you can't deliver all of this information to your athletes in one day or even 1 year. But I tried. Actually, my first year of coaching, I had a notebook that thick and I made for each girl and I gave it to them. And so it was at the end of that year, I realized like, I'm really going to need to simplify and organize my coaching philosophy, pulling from all of these sources and try to get things in order. And so it's morphed in shape over the years, but it's a great process. And it's one of the processes that I always encourage anybody that asks me right now, I want to be a coach, what do you think I should do? My answer has been the same the last 5 years. I think you need to put your coaching philosophy on one page. And if you can't put your coaching philosophy on one page, and I'm not talking about coaching philosophy of just overall, when I'm talking about your entire coaching philosophy for getting that athlete better psychologically, physically, and in the skill, all of it on one page. I think that really helps somebody understand their strengths and how they can grow and develop. And it's been super helpful. And then things evolve. I've learned so many things from Christopher the last several years that are now within our system. And you keep learning but to have that order in one pager, I love one pagers, is so good for your athletes and it's so good for your staff because you want to be singing the same song to your athletes. So that's about as brief as I can go without going into the details.
Yeah, that was good.
I was just going to say our coaching philosophy is a lot of times if you'll ask a coach, like, what is your coaching philosophy? They'll immediately start talking to you about how they either communicate with athletes or like what they like to do on the court. It's like, boom, they just start talking about that. And it's like, okay, our coaching philosophy is how are we going to coach the people first, build a relationship, deal with struggle. And then we kind of get into you got to coach the attitude first. And then you can kind of get into some of the more actual physical performance and then the tennis. And because the fact is the thing that I just said is not sustainable. It maybe works for a little while, but it's not sustainable and it won't really, I don't think it can win championships. So
very intentional and organized. And with stuff like that, it just takes the guesswork out of everything.
Yes.
I remember when you guys would have your meetings and you guys would come to kind of a fork in the road, you would just pull out pull out the pyramid and your coaching philosophy, and it would help answer those questions. So I think that would be an awesome challenge for whichever listener is a coach or in any context like that, to put their coaching philosophy on one page in an organized fashion to encompass all facets that you mentioned. And I will put a link in the show notes to that episode I made. So these are the inspiration behind that. So without further ado, what is the coolest story that you guys have thus far in your careers?
I mean, I saw that in your questions, and I was really torn because I don't know if you classify it in cool. It depends. There's so many different stories. I have two. I wouldn't. Cool. What's your definition of cool, Matt?
Guest discretion.
Okay, guest discretion. Well, I'll go with one now and one later when you asked what's a story I'm most proud of, because both could fit into both categories. But I would say a cool story that I had was I had this international girl from Spain on my team who wanted to be a nurse. And I was reading a book at the time called Mindset by Carol Dweck. And, she pits growth mindset versus fixed mindset. And I was learning a lot about that. At the same time, I had this girl trying to pass her prerequisites for nursing school, and she was failing. And she was having to take the nurse entrance exam. She kept failing. She also had another class that she was struggling in. And, in college athletics, a big deal is keeping your players eligible. You can't put a student athlete on a path where they're going to be ineligible. They can't even play on your team. So I kind of had this fork in the road where I had to choose, was I going to side with the academic advisor who, was doing their job and saying, hey, like, you're not going to be eligible if you continue to go down this path. But I was also reading this book called Carol Dweck where it was saying parents, coaches, mentors need to be encouraging young children and kids and teenagers and student athletes alike to embrace challenges, to persist in the face of setback, and to never give up. Who am I to come into this person's life who's wanting to be a nurse and tell her, no, you shouldn't do that, it's too hard, just so you can be eligible? So she was taking this summer school class, and she had to pass it, and she got an F on the first exam. And I remember making the decision with the academic advisor saying, no, we're not going to drop the course. She's going to stay in it, and she's going to try hard. And I remember telling her, Andrea, just try hard. Don't worry about it. Focus on your effort. Learn as much as you can. I still remember this day driving down Poplar Avenue in Memphis, Tennessee. She called me. She's like, Lee, I just got the second exam back. I got a 64. It's still not great, but it's so much better than the first. And I actually feel like I'm learning the information now. And she was so excited. And I remember just pulling over because I was almost crying. Even talking about it now, it gets me emotional because for me, it changed my even thought process. It was like, you know what? It really is about that. Overcoming a challenge is relative. It's not really about getting an A or a B. It's actually really about this girl internally realizing that when she puts that effort forth, that builds a self-esteem and a confidence that can't be there had I told her, no, you don't need to do that. Get out of that. So that was early in my coaching career, and it's just a memory that I've always felt like was cool. And when I get challenged myself, I always think about that because I'm reminded, you know what? I can't take the easy road. I can't let this girl take the easy road out. It's not going to pay off. And just her excitement, I've always felt like that was just a really cool story. And she actually went on to be a nurse. She's a nurse back in her home country, Spain, right now. And she's loving her profession and just super rewarding. That was a super reward. So there's my cool story for you.
Yeah, that was awesome. I remember you telling me that the first time. And I like how you said it's bigger than just an A and a B and a grade in a class. It's like what am I setting her up for the mindset wise, kind of for the rest of however she's going to go about her stuff and struggle. So I would qualify that as a cool story for sure.
Okay. Thank you, Matt.
What about you, C-Dub?
When I don't know, when I read that question, I just thought about sort of like a situation where that was overwhelmingly just left me kind of like almost shocked and like dumbfounded. And maybe even one of the first times that I felt like what I was doing was giving me like a platform, or what my player was really the platform, and he's the one that all the cameras are on, but I was a part of it. So it was 2014. I'm in Margaret Court Arena. My player, who's my cousin, is he had qualified for, did he quali that year? Yeah, he qualied that year. Beat Timo DeBacher in the final round of qualies, and then he drew Juan Martín del Potro. And so packed house, Margaret Court Arena, which is the second largest, I think, arena there, right below Rod Laver. And so I don't know how many people actually
Australian Open, for those who don't know.
Australia, right? Yeah,
Australia, yeah. And I'm sitting in the box, and I'm with like all these federation coaches. That's just how it works. All the important people, they show up to the box when the American's playing a big, stud star. So there was a moment I think it was in maybe the third set. He lost in 4 sets. He won the first set, but they were trying to rally him back. And this is, now keep in mind, this is in a foreign country. The whole crowd starts chanting USA, USA, and it was like, it got to that point where everybody was in unison, and it was like, and I just like was looking around, and I saw him like smile and like kind of like savor the moment as well. But it was like, it just gave me goosebumps, and like that's cool. Like that is cool right there. And it's just a moment that it's hard to describe. It just kind of left me. I mean, the whole rest of, when the match was over, I went back and I just sat in the locker room, and I was like, they were chanting USA for this guy, and everybody was getting into it. I don't know. It just was it was a neat representation of something that was going on, that was, you're representing your country. I mean, you know, in a way, in a foreign land, and everybody's looking at you, and
mm-hmm.
It was powerful. So that was kind of cool.
And what spurred them to start chanting USA, if I'm not mistaken, was he was down, but then didn't he kind of fight back, or kind of something that you'd been working on as like the coach athlete, if I'm not mistaken? Like, it wasn't just out of nowhere, right?
No, I mean, it was, we always work on his mental resiliency, so to speak. And he was doing a great job in staying in the match. It was a tremendous match. I mean, it was even he won the first set and lost the next 3 sets, but they were close, and he fought till the end. He didn't give up. I mean, his relationship with the game sometimes was love and hate. And when he was having a hate day, he would sort of, he had a tendency to, he could withdraw effort sometimes, just to like kind of show his control. He would show his control over the game. It's like, well, okay, I'm just not going to try today because I have that choice. So, but yes, to answer your question, I mean, he was doing a great job, and so he deserved it.
Yeah, it was kind of just everything coming together to get this foreign stadium to start chanting USA. So
yeah.
To put it all together. Next, what is the story kind of most fundamental to you as a coach that's brought you to right now?
Well, I touched on mine earlier. I think the fundamental thing I get back to is really that first conversation I had with my mentor when I got hired at such a young age. You know, there were a couple key things that conversation was about. that have been relevant from the very beginning of my coaching career to now, and I'll just share a few. That one of the things when he asked me, well, so what are your core values? And I'm 24 and I'm like, I don't know. I was like, well, what are yours? And he ran a student ministry on campus. I was like, well, what are y'all's core values? And he said, well, our first core value is privilege mentality. It's like, I don't want people working for our ministry who feel like they have to. I want people who feel like they get to. I want them to have a true thankfulness and gratitude for what they're doing. And I thought about that for a while over the next few weeks, because I was like, student athletes, of every sport, and especially in tennis, can get burned out. And here we are offering full scholarships. I certainly don't want anyone on the program, on the team, feeling like they have to do this. They have to go to training and they have to practice. And so, borrowing that core value from him has been the foundational thing. And so there's a lot that goes into that, establishing that type of worldview and perspective. But I always go back to that conversation. Another thing that he taught me over several years was, more is caught than taught. And that if I'm going to teach about having an attitude of gratitude or this privilege mentality, then I need to own that myself, and so I can't walk to the courts every day around my team feeling like I have to be here, but then tell them, hey, stop acting like you have to be here. It's a privilege, be thankful. It's like, it doesn't work like that. More is caught than taught. So am I embodying my own values? And then the last thing I'll say is, people don't care how much you know till they know how much you care. Those three things have really shaped my entire coaching career. And when I get kind of distracted or lost in the mix, I always come back to those three things, and it grounds me and it makes me. So that's not more or less a story, but it is a story about asking for help, because that story is a 24-year-old who had no idea really what he was doing, a lot of passion but no direction. And I think that's something that we need to do more of, and especially people starting off their careers, is being willing to ask people that you respect what they do. I really respected this guy. He made a massive difference in my life. And so that story of asking for help led to those three massive values. And so I always circle back to that, and it's been very fundamental to me throughout 15 years of coaching.
And the theme of asking to help, starting out as a coach, but also with you and C-Dub, with asking for the consultant, it's intentional in wanting the best for you and your athletes, and knowing that you don't have all the answers, which can be a very difficult thing for some people to admit. But
yes.
And then with the more is caught than taught, I'll never forget, it was like the first cold day of the fall, if you remember the story.
I do remember.
Yeah, and I didn't think it was that cold because I'm from the Midwest, but everyone's from Texas.
It was freezing.
And coach comes out, guns a-blazing. He's hopping around, screaming. He's all excited. He's launching tennis balls outside of the practice area, just trying to get the girls hyped up. And they had a great practice. And I was like, geez, coach, like, whatever you had before practice, can I have some of that? And he was like, well, how can I tell the girls to get all excited for practice, even though it's cold, if I'm not doing it myself? And I was just like, oh, wow, like that makes a lot of sense. So definitely more is caught than taught. I enjoyed that for sure.
Yeah, that was a great memory. I remember that. I remember being exhausted after that practice, because that was definitely manufactured.
But it got the girls to bring it that day. So
it did. That was a great practice. I remember that very vividly. And it's a reminder that I need to do that every day, really. But I do remember that's a very good story.
What about you, C-Dub?
I got a story that's fundamental for C-Dubs, unless he's got one. But I think that, you walking out of the U.S. Open, Arthur Ashe, is a good, I don't know if it's fundamental, but I do think everything culminated into that moment for you to see things very clearly. And I think maybe 10 years from now, you might look back at that moment as pivotal. If you have another one that you were thinking of, I've just always enjoyed hearing that. And yeah,
I think that was kind of, well, it certainly was pivotal. I mean, it led me to, I mean, there's a lot that goes into that story.
yeah, I know. Sorry.
The only time I ever gotten, and Lee like wants me to like one day cry in front of the team, which I don't know if it'll happen or not, but I almost cried telling that story to the team in our
You did.
preseason meeting, because it's powerful. There were a lot of emotion. Basically, I'll tell that briefly so you get an idea of what Lee's talking about. And then I do have one other idea I was going to share, but that was my final pro event. So when was that, Lee? That would have been US
August
Open 2018.
Yeah.
And normally so that was my last thing. And I just wasn't, it's really a story about enjoyment and finding kind of a little bit more of my larger purpose and why I'm a coach and, what am I doing here and how am I having an impact? But I normally, in when you're at a Grand Slam, which is one of the four, major events, US Open is one of those, it's the place of networking. It's the place where everything happens. Everybody's there, all the agents, all the representatives for Nike and Adidas and Head and Wilson, all these things. And it can be when like coaching changes happen because everybody's together and they can talk, and hirings and firings and all that stuff. So it's a great place to network. And so you have to take advantage of that. I couldn't basically muster up the motivation to like stick around, and like normally when my player's done, I'll go around and I'll chat with people and I'll talk. And I remember just looking around and looking up at Arthur Ashe Stadium and just being like, I don't enjoy being here right now. I'm burnt out. I can't. It was a really empty, like very emptiness that I felt, and I just walked out knowing that like I wasn't coming back in that capacity. And I just like went straight to the bus and got on, and it was like, here I go. And it was weird. It was like, what am I going to do? I don't know. But I took some time off and did some self-reflection, and it really I didn't work for like a few months, but I was talking with Lee, and I was coming back to Fort Worth, and we were going through some of that. But yeah, I didn't feel like I was having a positive impact, but the game kind of beat me down a little bit. It sort of was like almost, I felt like the game was like evil in a way. I didn't find substance to some of the people that I had interacted with for a long time. That sounds really almost evil of me to say, but I didn't feel like the game of tennis was doing a good job stewarding the athletes. I felt like there were a lot of people in that world that were unhappy, and without perspective. And so there's a lot that goes into that, but that's kind of what Lee's talking about.
And it did ultimately lead you into the more full-time position here, which was the time. Yeah. I just thought the timing was serendipitous with that happening. And then I think it was maybe 6 weeks after that, we had the official offer for you to start with us.
It did. Yeah, it did kind of, it all happened the timing was very interesting. And part of the reason that college, I think, is such a great place to, work is because you have the resources and platform it's better. You have a staff to work with. You have people that you can lean on and rely on. And so, and I think that's also part of it too. Like with Lee, I mean, I trust him, and I enjoy working with him. I enjoy that back and forth. You don't get that a lot of times on tour. It's kind of just you're kind of everything. So, and everybody's out to get you and take your job and tell you how bad you are and try and have you lose matches. So rewinding just a little bit, there was a time when I came out of when I was helping coach that Tennessee team that we were really good. We won a lot of tennis matches and we won a couple SEC championships and competed for a national championship and all that stuff. And I was like, wow, this is going really well. I actually felt I was doing some interviews for some college jobs then, and I felt I was probably a little entitled. I was coming, I thought, I'm a big SEC school. I'm doing great. All we do is win. I had no idea how hard it was to actually get the program to that point. I had no respect for it. I just was like, we're so good. I'm so good. I know everything. Why would you not hire me? Because I have a ring, you know? So that, and I, then I got the offer to go to go on tour with my cousin, who's the guy I told the story about earlier. And Andres Pedroso, who's the director of tennis at UVA now, and he's the head coach for the men. He was a mentor of mine, and he told me when I asked a ton of people what should I do? Should I take a college job or should I go on tour? And he said, you are young, single, whatever, go on tour and learn about the game on a global scale. That sentence. And it blew me away. And I was like, okay, that sounds pretty good. I think I should do that. But it's impactful because it changed my perspective. It kind of shifted me into, you don't know everything that's out there. You're unaware in a lot of ways how hard you have to work to be successful. So go out there and be the little fish in the big pond and see what happens. And so that was a good perspective, kick for me to be able to have that, for him to say that powerfully and make that choice. And so it did allow me to kind of go out there. And that's what I did. I changed my mindset to what else can I learn and who else can I learn from out on tour? So, and it made me better. So that was pivotal, I think, for me, to have that opportunity. And that's kind of why I was able to come full circle and be appreciative of it.
Yeah. It's crazy how one simple sentence like that can have such a huge impact kind of looking back.
Yeah.
So some really cool stories. So we got about 15 minutes or so left for one more big question and then two smaller questions. So what is the story that y'all are most proud of thus far?
All these questions kind of run the same for me, but there are different things that stick out to my head. My second year of coaching, I had a group that had really struggled. They the 2 years before I came, I think they were 2-14, and then 1 year before I came, they were, I think, 1-14. And the first year we battled and struggled, and then I had 4 seniors. So my second year being a head coach at University of Memphis, I had 4 seniors that had been through that kind of, and we were at conference championships, and we had not won the first round of a conference championship in 7 years. And it's a conference round. I mean, we were in the bottom end. And I remember we won our first round and clinched the match 4-3. And the girls dogpiled on each other, and one girl jumped a fence and tripped and flipped down, and then she ran over and jumped over, and there's just massive celebration. I mean, if you take a celebration that you see of a team winning an NCAA championship, and you take a celebration of what happened there, you would not think it was different. So the moral of that story for me was very similar to the Andrea story and her overcoming, is that, celebrating things is so important, and it's so relative. It's actually not about the milestone. It's about a student athlete or a person improving and being better than they were last week. And so us winning the first round of conference tournament for the first time in 7 years, for those 4 seniors, that was their national championship. And it was a big deal. And the amount of work that they had to put into to accomplish that was the same amount of work that maybe the team that won the national championship that year put in. And so for them, again, the personal worth and value and confidence and belief that came from that was amazing. And I'm when you climb the ladder in the sports world, I think we're so tempted to just lose that. It's like Christopher and I want to win an NCAA championship. That's what we're determined to do. That's what we want to do. And it's easy to believe the lie that we can't celebrate anything else unless we do that. It's actually not true, and it's not healthy, and it's not good for us to do that with our players. So I always think about that story because it's challenging, because it's hard to actually replicate at a higher level. It's really hard to call a timeout and celebrate those smaller victories of improvement. But I think if Christopher and I want to really do a good job, and if we ever want to reach that milestone, we're going to have to celebrate like that team celebrated. And that memory always sticks out because it was so different. I have memories of our team winning and doing things, but the amount of passion and celebration and intensity and full commitment to celebrate that was displayed in that moment was so raw and real that it's like, man, I don't know if I've had a team celebrate that authentically, that together. And to think that that was winning the first round of a conference tournament, it just makes you realize, what do I need to be trying to set up and teach and lead our team toward here? You can definitely over celebrate. I'm not saying, hey, everybody gets a trophy and, oh my goodness, we accomplished practice plan today, let's have a party. I'm not saying that. I think you understand what I'm saying. There's got to be an appreciation for the person who is putting in a lot of work and moving forward and growing and improving and being able to call timeouts and celebrate those things are very important. So I love that memory. I still stay in touch with those 4 seniors. They're remarkable. That's back in the day when there wasn't a lot of PC coaching and things were a little bit more tough. It's like on the line every time. So that's a story I'll always remember. And I love those girls. I appreciate those girls.
Yeah, I like to celebrate everything because the milestone is relative, and relatively speaking, like you said, to get to that first win of the conference tournament versus winning it all, it could be the same or even more so for your squad. And it's funny. I've had one dog pile in my life when we made it to the College World Series and then lost the first 2 games, but it was the first time our team ever made it. But the year before that, when I was a senior in high school, so I wasn't on the team yet, it was the team's first conference tournament berth, and they dogpiled with 1 game left to go in the season. It was halfway through the doubleheader after the first game, and they just started dogpiling. It's like, we still have another game in like 30 minutes, but it was the first time that they'd ever made the conference tournament. That was a big deal. So
yeah,
dog piles feel great, and it can be easy to get caught up in the huge, ginormous goals. But you still have to enjoy the process along the way, because there's going to be a lot more smaller milestones.
Yes.
That big one. So
yes,
yeah, I like that story. What about you, C-Dub?
Most proud of. I've had 3 players that I consulted with basically to discontinue their career. And I thought I'm very proud that I have a coaching philosophy that allows me to do that, because 2 of those situations were directly, did directly affect me financially, but it was the right decision for them. And they came to me and felt like they could have that conversation. And I advised them, because I believe it was the best choice for them in their lives to stop playing. And it took a while. I mean, there were tears, and it's like that, but it was the right decision. And I've been thanked for it, but I'm just very proud that I was at a point in my career that I could have that foresight, or just, and I consulted other people too before I had that conversation with them and really went there. But it's telling. It's that's what their career made them feel like they didn't have a choice. It's like, no, you have a choice. You can do something else that might make you happier, and that's okay. Tennis does not have to define you completely, and your wins and losses are not who you are when you put the racket away. So there was another really cool thing that I was really proud of. I coached a guy when he came out of college, and he is now coached by my cousin who I coached. So it was a neat little thing. I was in Wimbledon. I was at Wimbledon this summer, and I was recruiting, and I watched him win his first Grand Slam match, which was my cousin's, as a coach, first Grand Slam win as a coach. And I just kind of stepped out of it and watched it happen. And I was proud of them and what they accomplished together, but just, it was emotional kind of seeing where they are now. They've kind of come up and they've had a lot of success. That was kind of neat to witness. So some good bear hugs going on.
Yeah, I like both those stories. It's not like you and your own agenda and what you got going on. Like you referenced, some of them had negative financial implications for yourself, but that was what was right, and
Yeah.
it can be super easy, like myself included, get caught up in what's convenient or what's best for you. But I can only imagine how rewarding it was when it kind of hit you, how much of an impact you can have kind of outside yourself. So I enjoyed that story as well. Before I move on to the last two questions, anything else you guys prepared or you think would be worthy of mentioning?
Let's say you mentioned the Whoop device earlier. It's been fascinating, and it was a great investment on our part for our team, and it's really made things non-emotional, and it's helped save our relationships with a lot of the girls, because you got to, when you're leading a group of girls, it's hard to identify, not a group of girls, a group of athletes. It's hard to have the correct periodization and planning and recovery for everybody at the same time. So that was, whether it was Whoop or Whoop has been great with us, whether it's any fitness device. I think that data is helpful. And I think you actually helped us wrestle through a lot of that before we got started to understand the functional use of it. And Christopher and I and you did a good job of saying, this is exactly how we're going to use it. This is, and these are all the problems that could come from using it. But I thought that our relationship, and I've heard a lot of stories about how this device, any fitness device, has been implemented with programs in a poor fashion. And I was just glad that we did our first year and it actually wasn't poor at all. It was really good. And so all those stories you hear from other programs that, oh, it didn't go well, blah, blah, blah. I thought ours went really well. I think we had less injuries because of it. I think we had more productive practices, and yeah, decreased a lot of self-awareness for the girls. That's it.
Well, it kind of allows me to say a little bit too. I mean, that yes, Matt helped us manage the Whoop amazingly, and Matt was just available to us in a lot of different ways, helping. His presence was very positive in our program because he was, not only because he was a sports scientist, but he would come to our practice and be a great encourager, and we built a lot of trust with him and within our program, and we appreciate him and his opinion, and we enjoy allowing him to weigh in on stuff. And so, and Matt mentioned earlier that he would be a part of our coaches meetings, and that's true, and that's because we valued his input. So surely it would be a good thing to throw a little encouragement back at the podcast host here.
Oh wow, make me blush. And two things I'll say really quick on that, and then we'll move on. I remember when we met, and you said Whoop earlier. I thought I was the sports scientist. I had all the answers, and I said, oh, so you have this technology, so you have to have a plan. Like, you're not going to get this technology just to get it, And I was like, so what's your thought process? Like, why? And you had you had done your research, and you knew what it did and what it didn't, and you had a game plan of how you're going to implement it. And I was just like, they haven't even gotten it yet, and they already know everything about this product, and they already know the why and the how and the what. And I was just very impressed by that. And I tell this story to whoever I share my experiences with, of me helping you guys out. But it was like a month or so in, and Whoop is a very advanced technology. The website does a lot of stuff, and I was trying to figure out what I could do that Whoop couldn't, like trying to create my value. And I said that to you guys. I was like, I haven't been able to find much that I can do that the Whoop can't, and you guys said, you're a guy, you're passionate about what you do, and your passion can help out our girls, and they're going to appreciate that. So if at the very least you just show up and you support the girls, that's all we care about, and I don't even know how many hundreds of thousands of balls I shagged at practice, but I had an awesome time because you guys were good to me, and the girls were good to me, and I was showing myself and showing my face and supporting the girls and giving back how I could. And the opportunity I had was way beyond just looking at the data, is to support the girls and help you guys hammer out kind of your process and everything. So it was an awesome opportunity all the way around. So I'm always grateful for that.
Yeah.
So
yes, it was great.
So on the Talking Shop podcast, I like bringing stuff full circle into driving action, because the philosophical and the theoretical is all fine and good, and I love it. But at the end of the day, if it doesn't help us drive action to get better, then what's the point? So if you had 1 to 3 kind of succinct things that someone in sports performance, a practitioner, can do tomorrow to become better, what would they be?
Find your why. We say, what's your larger purpose? Another way of saying it. Find your why. What's your larger purpose beyond yourself that leads to gratitude and motivation? Put your philosophy on one paper, one page, and get extremely organized and detailed. Those would be my 3 things. There you go.
I have, those are good, and I agree with them. I have one thing that's part of my theme, I think, was relationships a little. And so my thing would be a thank you note. You can write a thank you note. Always write a thank you note. I was taught that from a very young age. My mom and dad and grandparents, quite frankly, always encouraged me to write thank you notes, and most of them were handwritten. I think handwritten is even better, but there's really nothing like getting a genuine letter from somebody, even when you just don't expect it. But I think that's really powerful, and it helps maintain relationships, and it surprises people, but genuine. It needs to be genuine.
Thank you notes. I totally agree. I remember when I was younger, handwriting thank you notes for all the birthday presents I would get and stuff. I'm like, man, this is so stupid. Why am I doing this?
Yes.
But now I get it. So I totally agree. Genuine gratitude. Mm-hmm. So last thing, where can the listeners find you guys, get more of you?
I mean, Christopher is a social media guru. I'm a rookie. I don't know what, I leave that to him. I mean,
I'm hardly a guru.
Let's see. My Twitter is, I don't even know if this is my Twitter or my Instagram.
I will figure it out and put it in the show notes.
What's at Coach LT Walker? I think that's my Twitter.
I think that's your Twitter.
At Coach LT Walker. And my Instagram is Lee Taylor Walker.
My Twitter is at CPAT Williams, CPAT Williams. And my Instagram is at CDub101, but that's SEA
Oh.
BUB 101, which if I ever have enough money to own a boat, which my dad says is stupid anyway, it would be called the C Dub. Get it?
Hey, play on words. So
They can
I
just
will,
find me. They can just find me in Texas through my phone. They can text or email or call me if they want. I'm not huge on social media like C Dubs on his boat.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really either, but I am going to
so
share the new signees for women's tennis today. I will be more active today on social media than previous.
Me too. Actually, I will too.
fantastic. So just if the listeners want to reach out, they like some stuff, they want to just connect more, find you guys what you guys are putting out there. So those will be in the show notes. And thank you very much for taking the time to do this today. I know we've talked about this for a little bit, so it's nice to actually get this in the books. So
Yeah.
thank you again, and I'm looking forward to our next chat.
Thank you, Matt. And yes, let's do it again. I had fun.
Awesome.
As always, go Frogs.
Go Frog.